All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into the LA Sports Brotherhood. It's me, Ryan, with my brother Matthew, here to talk some USC football. We're starting our position group previews before spring. We're starting with a defensive lineman. That is by far the most important position in football generally, the trenches, but it was probably the worst group we've seen in the history of USC football last year, at least in terms of performance. So, obviously, a lot of questions. But with that context, Matthew, what are we looking at for our spring defensive lineman?
Yeah, so it's important to keep in mind that this is not our final roster that we'll be seeing against LSU
Yeah.
in Vegas. We're going to be taking a look back at these position groups after the spring game and after the portal. But as of right now, we've lost Jack Sullivan, Stanley T, Keon Bars, Tyrone Delaney, Dejon Benton, Solomon Bird, Romello Height, and Corey Foreman. And who we've added is smallest, just Isaiah Rakes and Nate Clifton. As of right now, the projected starters, at least in my opinion anyway, would be Nate Clifton at defensive end, Isaiah Rakes is at the nose tackle, Bear at D tackle, and then the rush end, Braylon Shelby. So right off the bat, like you said, just the most important position group in football. And unless your name is Tuli Pelotu and Bear Alexander, if you've been on USC the past 2 years, it hasn't been great. So we've added two names. This is the one group, especially I can almost guarantee, just as a fan, that we will be adding someone in spring, and it's definitely much needed. I do think there's some talent at the top. You look at Rakes, you look at Bear, you look at Shelby, but this doesn't have the depth of a Big Ten winning team, like not even close. To me, the X factor of this group is Braylon Shelby. I mean, he was a highly recruited player. He's about 6'5", 6'6". And immediately when we saw him, we just see this quick rush he had. If you take a look back to the Nevada game, just straight speed off the edge for a sack. You take a guy with that natural speed, strength, and he's added 30 pounds, and then he gets Coach Henny, one of the best D-line coaches in the country. I think it's safe to say that he should be the leading sack getter of this team. He can be that dominant rush end that we so desperately need. But yeah, there's some talent at the top, but we need a lot more depth. And I also think we need a defensive end. Nick Clifton's a nice player. He's a good guy. I don't think he's capable of starting at USC if you can compare him to like the blue bloods, the powerhouses of the Big Ten currently, Ohio State, Michigan. I don't think he's that guy. I think he's a good depth piece and should be in the rotation. But yeah, we definitely need to add some people in the spring. What do you think about the D line?
Well, honestly, first, I want to think it's funny because I'm on the USC official page, like they do spring previews for each position group. You mentioned all the people that left, but the only players that they actually mentioned as they're losing is Keon Barrs, Sullivan, and Solomon Bird, so Romello Height and Corey Foreman. It's just funny how little impact a lot of those guys had. I want to mention Jamil Muhammad is coming back. You know, I should say, I'm not the biggest fan of. Well, I really like him, but eh, I feel like he was kind of just like like a solid player in the midst of a bunch of really bad performances. So USC fans put him on a higher pedestal. To me, like he plays the rush end, or at least defensive end. He's an edge rusher type guy. Well, on the last defense, we've yet to see what his role is here. But he doesn't really have the body type for me where I would expect him to be successful, especially if the Big Ten is as much bigger and physical as people like to say, especially in the lower end. We'll see. But because we did see him struggle with bigger, more physical offensive linemen, especially tackles, like Notre Dame tackles that are actually good and are highly rated out of high school and expected to be playing in the NFL at some point. He just wasn't really making too much noise. And that so like that's kind of the thing. All the players last year, except for Bear, and even Bear a little bit to me, they all the players that SC fans liked or appreciated were like solid. So the returners that are coming back are solid. The ceiling of the defensive line right now is not very high. And I don't really know how much we can improve that year one. So, like you mentioned, depth. That's 100% I think we need to go for, and everybody needs depth. So it's not a like a special opinion, but I don't know how great we can make this defensive line. So I think we need like just straight up two whole shifts of defensive linemen that can come in and be solid, be competent, because I think our we'll get to it, but I think our defensive backs legitimately can be very good, and if they can have some nice coverage and give the D line time to get to the quarterback, it doesn't really matter if you have a crazy elite guy. If you're just solid and you could stop the run effectively enough and make a quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket effectively enough, it would be such a major improvement. But yeah, with that said, I think Anthony Lucas and Braylon Shelby, sorry, just to point those two out, they do have like that kind of high end potential, especially Braylon Shelby. He is the type of like, you compare body types, you compare types of players to Muhammad and Shelby basically played the same position last year. And to me, watching them rush, even with Shelby as a rookie, or as a freshman, that it was like a very clear difference. Shelby has that real potential to him. Anyway, so I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Um, I'll take a look at the rush end room, as they call it.
Yeah,
Uh, I think that is the one position where there is a little bit of depth because, like you mentioned, Muhammad's a nice player. I I didn't have him. I have Shelby starting in my projected
I agree.
starters. I think it's pretty much just what you said. He has that high end, that speed, that quickness, that strength, that length. I mean, Muhammad. I mean, again, it's his fifth year. He's really is a good player. He just doesn't have the body type. And last year, the believe it or not, the D line was a strength early in those games against the bad teams. As soon as they got to week 7, whenever we played Notre Dame, Muhammad and Bird's no longer here. They just were nowhere to be found. They got stood up by those big tackles. Shelby needs to be great this year, and he has every tool to be great. Another guy, Sam Green, is second year. I'm really high on Sam Green. I think he's a great player. I think he has good potential.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the Russians, I do feel pretty good if Shelby takes that next step. Muhammad can get in the rotation. Not in every snap player, but still a good player. And then Sam Green has the potential in the second year.
Yeah,
You mentioned Bear. It's tough not to mention Bear. He was the only bright spot of last year's defense, and he really was a good player, but he just got double teamed, triple teamed
yeah,
so much, and there was occasions where he's so quick, he's so good at getting to the backfield, where he'd get into the backfield, but he had Stanley T or Keon Bars, someone else next to him, and that guy gets pushed back, bears in the backfield, and it just creates a massive hole for the running back. And we'll get into the linebackers next, but Mason Cobb couldn't fill and tackle, and it happened over and over again. I think Isaiah Rakes is so big for this team
yeah,
because if he can just eat up space and help stop the run, that would be so huge, especially if Shelby's going to be a big sack guy. We just need size, strength, and be able to stop the run. And Rakes is the first guy in the past since the Lincoln Riley era who has had that body type and actually had playing time. And it feels nice, but like I said, he can't play every snap. So I think you mentioned and for this D line to be really good, we need to turn over some guys. I think you need like a starting defensive end who like is going to be your guy, and I think you need 2 to 3 bodies on the interior because I mean there's just no 300 pounders after Bear and Rakes. I mean Kobe Pepe is 300 pounds or close to it,
yeah,
and actually in limited time he's looked pretty good, but he hasn't played too much, so you can't really expect much.
yeah.
Elijah Hughes is a sophomore,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily that 300-pound body type, but I do like him. I think he has a potential to be in the rotation. But yeah, when I mention depth, I'm thinking the 300-pound guys in the middle. I think Luke. I was expecting so much from Lucas, and he just one he didn't really play, and two he just didn't show that he has that it factor. So I don't really know what to expect from Lucas,
Yeah,
but it's tough when you see a top 100 player And actually, if you look across the board, you have two former SEC top 100 players and Shelby, who's another top 100 players, just on star talent. I mean, that should be. It's looking like a great D line, but we've yet to see Lucas be that impactful for us.
Yeah,
So I'll kick it back to you with a question.
yeah.
Do you think this could be a top, I'll say top 6 unit in the Big Ten?
Oof. I wish I could say that. Well, I wish I could say it because I want it to be true, but I don't know enough about the non-Big Ten schools. I'm just gonna be honest. But just based on performance, I don't right now. Assuming Rakes can garner a double team, because I 100% agree with your assessment of what Rakes can be for the defense. But if he isn't necessarily productive, which he kind of was, kind of wasn't. I mean, he's a massive nose tackle, so I'm not expecting big numbers, you know. That's not what their role is. But he needs to be double teamed. Like he has to command a double team essentially every single time he's on the field, or else they're just gonna keep doubling Bear and nothing changes. So there's a lot of moving pieces right now to make them, or like a lot of dominoes have to fall in order for me to be like, okay, I feel confident that this unit has the talent or will be able to perform at a level. So, I mean, I think it's not unreasonable, but then you have to like just in terms of like overall production rankings, but then you have to remember that like schools like Nebraska and Iowa, those schools exist just to play defense and they won't have anything else going for them in the in the on the field. But like these their units will be competent and successful. So it's like that type of stuff. I don't know if they are at this level. I think I 100% believe in the coaching to get them there, but I can't make that assumption right now. And I also want to say, speaking of coaching, Anthony Lucas didn't really show me anything. I agree, but it's really difficult, and it's funny coming from me as someone that wasn't really a massive defensive coaching hater last year. Definitely not lover. Didn't like him. Didn't like Grinch. Didn't like the entire staff. Thought they were very stupid. But I tip like the players were also not like performing. And it's but Anthony Lucas was a very interesting one to me because I didn't know which side to put him on. If he was a bad player or because of if he was unsuccessful because of Grinch. Because sometimes it didn't look like he had a real motor, but other times it looked like he was really going to get into it. And then he kind of just stopped playing the second half of the year. And that happened to a lot of players that I personally think are good are good. So I don't know what to think about him. He dropped weight coming in, story of every single defensive lineman that played for USC the last 2 years. This year I think they have him up 10 pounds. Like I think that's another story that we gotta acknowledge. Every single player here has gained weight since the last season. They've been posting pictures to make sure that we know, like the coaching staff has, this conditioning staff has, like, hey, we can still do this. And there's been some freakish, like unreal body transformations in just a month of training. Like, I don't know how much they're gonna come into play, but like we have a couple freshmen now, G.D. Abasiri, Lorenzo Cowan, Cam Fountain, Kalen Miller, and all of them have like had like some body transformation stuff going on, like putting on weight. But Gina Abasiri looks like a different human being in like a month and a half. I don't know if you've seen the pictures. Um, and he gained like 20 pounds in a month. It's psychotic. And Cam Fountain was the best defensive lineman prospect that we signed last year, defensive and defensive line. And coaches are super excited about him. And of course, like they're going to be excited about everybody or whatever. But it reminds me a lot of the way they're talking about Braylon Shelby last year. And Cam Fountain does have the pedigree of that guy, so maybe we can get a Braylon Shelby type, like, like little firing him in there, like contributions, like get in and out, and that would even if any of those guys are playable beyond the first half of like the first couple games of the season. Not even first couple because they're playing LSU, but like you know what I mean, like against real competition, that just adds everything. Like you mentioned Elijah Hughes, if Devin Tompkins ever plays football, I haven't really seen him, but like his body type's crazy. Sam Green. There's a bunch of potential. Like they've had some intriguing classes the last couple years in the defensive line. They're not really like inspiring in terms of star ratings or whatever, but like their body types are interesting. They've put on a lot of weight now. I don't know. I for as down as I can be about them, I do genuinely think there's real potential for them to be solid, and that's not even including any additions we make in the portal.
Yeah, I think it's really important to notice like how much bit like the Braylon Shelby transformation is crazy to me, and
Yeah,
it's hard not to get excited about that guy. It's just I know eventually we're going to get to the point where you mentioned Iowa, Nebraska, Michigan. We are going to be that with we just have size everywhere, speed everywhere. I can promise you USC is going to get back to that. It's just we don't I don't think necessarily we have the talent on this team, but next year and the year after that, I'm so confident in it. I'm confident in Coach Henny. Hopefully he stays around longer than I expect. But yeah, it's just the the past recruiting classes haven't left us with those big 300 pounders.
yeah,
So we're fighting to get as much as we can get. Again, this is the one group where I think not only we need in the portal, but we're going to get someone in the portal.
yeah,
It's just we don't know necessarily who. I think this is a group, and you said we said this a lot of pretty much every group last year, and it didn't work out. Where it's like if these certain guys can hit their potential and be that, they're going to be pretty good. And for the past 2 years, every single one of those questions ended up being bad.
yeah,
But I mean,
yeah,
taking a look at this group, you mentioned Lucas. If Lucas can be who he was as a recruit under Coach Henny, that's so huge. If Shelby can be who he is, that's so huge. Bear, if he can take a slight improvement, but he was great last year. And then same with Rakes. There's potential, but it's hard to be confident because every time we've seen potential over the past 2 years, it just didn't hit. I highlight a guy like Domani, Curtis, all these guys. So I think to answer my own question about the top six, right now I don't see a top six D line, especially in a conference like the Big Ten. I
yeah,
do think with a massive spring portal, I think we can eventually be there because, like I said, Bear and Shelby to me look like NFL guys. So
yeah,
I think you need depth. You need a defensive end that could be that NFL caliber player. Then I think you're set. So
yeah,
I think to end off all these previews, we'll take a quick look at just the trajectory of each group in terms of the coaches, the young talent, and the recruiting. So for the D line, of course, Coach Henny, the big addition. Seems like the guys are really loving him. Sean Nua stayed on staff. How do you feel about the future of the defensive line in terms of recruiting? I mean, the recruiting's made some noise recently
yeah.
in terms of the young talent. How do you feel?
Well, truthfully, there is no answer other than I feel really good because it is literally impossible to be as bad as we were the last 2 years, both in recruiting and I mean I guess we could have had no defensive line recruits the last couple of years. So we did something in that front. But yeah. So it's definitely looking up, even if it was just firing Grinch from last year and then having the exact same team, it would have still been looking up to me. But now there's like actual tangible, a realistic reason to be excited about it. So yeah, I think we're definitely on the up. I think the team is on the up. It's gonna be interesting as we get further through the groups to see like when we really break it down because I don't know if we've really done that to see how we feel overall. But defensive lineman, I think we can be solid, and I think we're one or two steps away, either internal with like Shelby taking a real leap into that NFL caliber guy production wise, um, or same thing with Lucas, even though I think the ceiling might be a little bit lower on him. Or we have there's a splash in the portal because that'll change everything. If there's because the only thing about the portal stuff is that you never control who's going to be in there, and if there is nobody, then we're kind of screwed. But if we can get either a couple good depth guys or like legit make a splash somewhere on the interior or anywhere really, I think that changes the trajectory big time. Because if this unit performs, include with Coach Henny recruiting and general upturn of the entire organization, and I guess assumed that there's now high school NIL being thrown around, this class, this recruiting class in 25 is going to be absurd. Like we're going to be challenging for the number one spot if we get performances, if we can keep momentum. So that I think that's the overall like recruiting ceiling, the like franchise university ceiling for the entire program. But it's lofty. It's
Yeah,
tough. Go ahead.
yeah, I agree. Again, to answer my own question, I mean, like you said, there's no way you can be mad about this in terms of recruiting. It's been on fire. Gibson and Terry, I mean, it's just been it's weird looking at 247 and seeing 5-star defensive linemen at USC. It just hasn't been that.
Yeah.
And there's so many young players I'm high on. I mean, Fountain is a monster. His mom, Mama Casey, if you know, you know, she's awesome on Twitter. But I look at him and Shelby next year. That could potentially be lethal on the edge with having two pass rushers like that. And I mentioned the two 5-star recruits. And then I'm glad you highlighted it because this is the most important thing to me is if you can turn Bear into a high NFL pick, somewhat high, if you turn Shelby into an All American,
It's
these
massive.
recruits will see the juice that like comes with USC and Coach Henny. If you can turn these guys into prospects, because that's what these kids want. They want to go to the NFL.
Yeah.
And if you see that guy like Coach Aaron Donald, that's one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, and you're able to turn these guys into NFL prospects, that will be so huge for us. It'll keep our two 5-stars to stick, and then it'll create a buzz, and then once you have that buzz in recruiting, then you're off and running. Especially at a program like USC. I'm gonna say this a lot. You cannot keep a program like USC down. It's only a matter of time. And when the offense is always going to be incredible under Lincoln Riley, the hire of Coach Henny was so massive because, like we said, D-line is everything. That's recruiting, performance. That's number one priority on defense. And I think we've taken the perfect step in who we've hired. Now we're starting to recruit. Now we just need the performance on the field.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I think that you're so close. Like you have certain guys, like you said it perfectly. If Shelby takes the next step, if you get, you know, a top guy out of the portal like we did with Bear last year, maybe at defensive end, you know, we're right there. And once we get the talent, we'll be at the top of the Big Ten, I believe.
Yeah. It's there for us, you know. It's going to be honestly, I didn't like the Big 10 move. I know a lot of people did. I don't it's not my thing. But the idea of a superpower SC playing a superpower Ohio State basically every year, especially if they can make the championship, is unbelievably cool to me, and I want to see that happen. Ohio State's loading up. USC looks like they're finally truly committed to being that type of power again, and it's exciting. It's really exciting. All right, thanks so much for watching. This is LA Sports Brotherhood. If you missed our past couple position previews, go ahead and check them out. Thanks so much for watching. Be back soon. Go Trojans.